Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, a lot of events and celebrations this summer are being changed because of the pandemic, and one of those in our area is George Washington Carver National Monument, Carver Day. And joining me today is Curtis Gregory from the monument. Thank you for being here today.
Hi, Judy. Thank you for having us.
I know Carver Days is something that you've always had, a big outdoor celebration, but a different approach this year.
Different approach this year because of course, of the health situation. So instead of an on-site event this year, we're kind of host it as a virtual event, where we're going to show a bunch of our past Carver Day activities, speakers, musicians, and such online. And so it should be, I think it'll be fun, but not as fun as the actual event, but we're still going to celebrate the establishment of the park.
And you say online, through Facebook. What kind of social media are you using for that?
Through Facebook, our Twitter page, and maybe we're going to try Instagram as well.
Great. So a lot of different ways.
A lot of different ways.
Off the top, for the viewers to know, Missouri Southern KGCS-TV is also going to air many of these programs you're mentioning as well during that 3-day period. I think it's the 11th through the 14th. You know, that first part of July.
Correct. Yes, and you guys are going to show some of our past guest speakers and such, which is we're really excited about it as well.
Another way we're trying to share with the community.
Right, so. still going to have that celebration, but in a different way.
And of course, Carver Day is tied into the establishment of the monument. So let's talk a little history to start off. 1943. 1943.
The whole idea of Carver Day is to celebrate the establishment of the park, which was July 1943. And so we celebrate the establishment as well as the accomplishments of George Washington Carver National Monument. Carver died in January of 1943, and 6 months later, Congress established a national monument in his honor. And so we were established in 43, but we actually didn't open for another 10 years, 1943.
Yeah, so it took a while to get things up and running, but that's the fact that it was established that long.
Yes.
And I know you have a lot of, like we say, videos and things. We have a short video that for our viewers who aren't familiar with George Washington Carver, I thought it'd be nice to show that at the beginning of the program to give a little background.
Right, so, it's our promotional video that we have on our website and other places that gives a little bit of an orientation about the park, as well as Carver somewhat.
Okay, so let's take a look at that video and let you find out a little bit more about George Washington Carver.
Hidden in a secluded corner of Missouri is a gem of both solitude and history.
I was born in Diamond Grove, Missouri, about the close of the Great Civil War, in a little one-room log shanty on the home of Mr. Moses Carver, the owner of my mother.
The site where George Washington Carver was born to a young enslaved mother is preserved today on 240 acres, maintained by the National Park Service near Diamond, Missouri. George Washington Carver National Monument, the first national park established to honor an African American, shares the story of Carver's struggle against poverty, prejudice, violence, and injustice on the path to success and achievement. Please join us for a first-hand glimpse into the experiences that propelled him from a local reputation as plant doctor toward national fame as a scientist, a conservationist, a teacher, and a humanitarian. Visit the park and take a guided tour of the 1 Mile Trail. Explore the woodlands, streams, and prairie where George learned to commune with God and nature.
Day after day, I spent in the woods alone and studied the great lessons nature is so eager to teach us all.
Envision young George carrying water from the spring, his secret garden, and becoming known as the neighborhood plant doctor. Along the trail, you can visit the 1881 Moses Carver House, where Moses and Susan Carver, a white family, lived. The trail also offers peaceful opportunities for contemplation, inspired by the words of Carver himself. Although George Washington Carver is buried at Tuskegee University, where he devoted much of his professional life, the Carver Family Cemetery honors members of the Carver family. The Visitor Center offers a wealth of information to explore Carver's life. Browse through historic documents, explore hands-on interactive exhibits, shop in the bookstore, and in the theater, enjoy a feature film of his life.
There are some things that an orphan child does not want to remember. An orphan child of a race that is considered inferior from every angle.
And here, you can discover what it was like to attend a 19th century classroom, as young George did.
My very soul thirsted for an education.
Join a friendly park ranger for a science lab demonstration. And make peanut milk in the lab. Learn of the struggles Carver faced and how he overcame discouraging odds to succeed in his mission to help others. Share in Carver's appreciation for art. Read news articles and letters. Listen to Carver's speeches. And create a Jessup wagon agricultural display like Carver used at Tuskegee Institute. Rising from enslavement, Carver was confronted with segregation and racial prejudice throughout his lifetime. Yet time and again, his resilience triumphed over adversity. His inquisitive mind, love of nature, simplistic lifestyle, faith in God, and I can attitude left a legacy we still marvel at today.
So figure it out for yourself, my lad. You are born with all that the great have had. With your equipment, they all began. Get hold of yourself and say, I can.
The world of Carver's childhood is still alive here, easily accessed from Interstates 44 or 49. George Washington Carver National Monument, a hidden gem in Diamond, Missouri, invites you to visit and experience this inspirational American story.
Curtis, I'd like to thank you for letting us show that video and really give a good background on George Washington Carver. It's a good, concise story for him.
Yeah, thank you. And as I said, that video's on our website, our YouTube channel. It's a nice orientation about the park. Sometimes you get visitors that, they think of George Washington Carver. The first thing they think about is Alabama.
Great.
We'll get visitors. Yeah, we'll get visitors that come into the visitor center. It's like, well, why is this here? What I remember of George is of the South, and we explain to visitors that this is where he was born in Missouri.
So it's the start of his story, his lifetime story.
Very much so. Yes, it starts here. It starts here in Missouri.
Okay. Of course, you mentioned the Carver Day celebration being changed. People are probably curious about the status of the park. We saw a lot of things in the video. Some of those you can't actually do right now, go inside and do the classroom and so forth because of the closings. Right,
because of the closings right now, the visitor center is closed, but you can still take a walk on the trail. Along the trail, we have a lot of what we call Wayside Exhibits that kind of help you tell the story of George Washington Carver's life. And of course, there's a house, an 1881 house on the trail, and that's open with exhibits. We have restrooms that are open, and in our little restroom area, you can get a brochure and learn a little bit more about Carver as well. And always get that stamp, that passport stamp.
So it's summertime. Are you seeing people traveling, stopping by the monument, even though they know they can't get into the building and see all the displays?
Yes, we're starting to see the traditional visitor, the visitors that travel. You can kind of tell RVs and stuff are coming through the park, and you can always tell that when you get the traveling visitor because they're interested in that cancellation stamp, whether they'll call or they'll send a note on Facebook or such and ask them if they can get that passport stamped.
And that's a real popular program for people who aren't familiar with it. That's something where you can go to all the national parks and monuments and you get a stamp, I've been there.
Yeah, get your little cancellation stamp. It's a little book where you can, every park has a passport program, and you can get a cancellation stamp. And a lot of visitors want that cancellation stamp.
That's great. Now, we saw the trail on the video, and you mentioned the sights along the trail, but for a lot of local people, that's always a popular place just to go take a walk and see the country.
Yeah, it's a nice place to come and to recreate. It's 3/4 of a mile. And you can just come out and take a walk. We'll get visitors that just want to come out in the morning, or if they're birding, if they want to come out and see the wildflowers, or just take just a casual walk. It's accessible for all visitors to take a nice little walk on the trail.
And of course, that ties right into Carver's interest in nature and his areas, that sparked his interest in looking at the outdoors.
Very, very much so. We have, on the trail, we have a little statue dedicated to George along the trail, and it's the area where we believe he first learned about, nature, flowers and trees, and where he learned to paint. And it's just a nice little peaceful area that really started the foundation of his love of nature.
And of course, at the end of the trail, you can see the prairie, you can see the cemetery. People can say, "Well, who's buried in the cemetery?" And sometimes you have to dispel the myth that he's buried there at times.
We always have to tell the visitors that George is buried on the campus of Tuskegee University now. But members of the Carver family, Moses Carver family, are buried there, as well as neighbors of the area. So it's kind of a community cemetery for the people that were in the area when actually George probably would have known, as well as some of the Carver family members.
So he had a lot of ties in the community, and I know another tie that has been discussed in a program I did earlier was the school in Neosho. People might be curious, what's the status of the school that George attended in Neosho?
Right. Well, when George left the Carver farm, wanted an education, so he went to Neosho. And the school that he originally went to, which was historically known as the 1872 Neosho Colored School, is still there today. And it's owned by the Carver Birthplace Association, and so they're trying to restore the building now, and they're doing a lot of good things and making a lot of progress on the building, and in the near future they hope to have some sort of like little visitor center or exhibits inside the buildings, but they still have a little ways to go for it, but they're making some progress.
And it's been a major project. It was
major
renovation. Right?
Major project that a lot of the building, the original structure is still there. So it's pretty neat to tell the story of Carver, as well as the Neosho community, as well as the Black community, that for those the students that went there.
You talked about the Birthplace Association. The community ties to the monument are very important. That really help you out throughout the year. And they play a big role in Carver Day.
Yeah, very much so. The CBA, the Carver Birthplace Association, is the cooperating association for the park. And they play a big role. They help us with Carver Day. They really co-sponsor Carver Day. And they do a wonderful job at the park as well as in the community. A lot of things that we could not do without the help of CBA, the Carver Birthplace Association. And matter of fact, the association was there before the park was. And they actually helped start the park with a grassroots organization that helped kind of start the park.
So 1943, the monument's established. 1953 is when you actually had the dedication, and we have some photos from that. So let's show some of those photos. Because kind of take people through the history that.
Right. It took a little while for about 10 years or so, and then on July 14th, which was the day the park was established, 10 years later, 53, is when they had the dedication of the park. And it's great. We had so many people here. You can see the bust actually was dedicated that day as well.
So that's the same bust we see today.
Same bust that you see today. And we had a lot of officials. These gentlemen here actually all knew George Washington Carver. Oh, wow. All the gentlemen in this photograph actually knew George, and they shared later on their oral histories of what they remembered of George. Oh, wow. So they invited a lot of the folks from the local community that, maybe they remembered George at one point or another.
Right.
So it was a great day. That the
monument marker?
The monument marker, yes. It's still there today, and it was kind of dedicated on that day as well. Okay. So it was a big deal. We had the gentleman that's speaking right now was the Secretary of the Interior at that time. And so there was a lot of Park Service folks that were there, a lot of dignitaries from the local area that were there. And they, it seemed to be a great day. It seemed like I think they invited over 1,000 or so people there. And these individuals here, I don't know who they are, but they were all from the Joplin area.
Okay, so they came to the monument that day for the dedication.
Came to the monument for the dedication. It seemed to be a wonderful time, and we're so grateful for these wonderful photographs that we still have of the dedication.
So being able to preserve that history and then so forth. So you started off with the monuments, and then eventually you got the building, and things have really grown since then. Right?
Exactly. We've grown a lot since then, with the visitor center, and then the expansion of the visitor center, expansion of trails and stuff. So the park keeps progressing forward.
Well, let's talk about Carver Day, because we're not actually able to do it this year in person, but let's describe some of the things that happen. I mean, obviously you're celebrating the foundation, the forming of the monument, but you have everything from singers to educational presentations. Tell me a little bit about
so Carver Day, as you mentioned, is the day that we celebrate the establishment of the park. So it's a fun day. We have music, we have kids activities, and we always try to have a guest speaker or two guest speakers that's going to focus on some aspect of Carver's life. historians, authors, or someone that's done extensive work on George Washington Carver. And so it's a fun day. We make peanut milk, and you can go take the trail. Normally, Carver Day averages about 800 to about 1,200 visitors, which is pretty good for us for a one-day activity.
One day of activity. Now the speakers, you talked about their emphasis. I know when looking at the videos that you've brought, we chose some of those for airing on KGCS, and like you mentioned, there's a lot of history, different focuses. I know one person's talking about their role of conservation that Dr. Carver had.
Right, yeah, one of our speakers, I believe that's Mark Hersey, he did his PhD dissertation on George Washington Carver. And he wrote a book, and it's pretty neat how he did some research in depth on George Washington Carver and basically in conservation movement and such.
I know another one I remember looking at talked about how George was, they call it 2 steps ahead of his time. So he was really ahead of his time in some of his thinking in terms of research and agriculture. And
sure,
things like that.
yeah, and we had one of our speakers that focused on that, actually kind of wrote a little book about that as well. So we always try to have someone that's done, like I said, in-depth work on Carver, and to, just explore the man a little bit more.
Now, a lot of people doing research about him. Do you still see that continuing today? That there are, we have these people who've done it in the past, but there's still other people who are coming out and saying, I want to find out more. I'm looking at this aspect of his life.
Sure, we get visitors, researchers. They're looking at different aspects of Carver's life, and they'll come out to the park to do research. We're very fortunate, Judy, at our park that we have an archival collection, about 300 or so original letters that are at the park, and researchers or historians will come out and want to review the letters and such on Carver's life.
So you can look inside his life by reading what he wrote.
Exactly,
what he wrote to
right,
him and tying along those lines. And Missouri, the state of Missouri, I know you've had Missouri State Historical Society also interested and involved to speak to
Sure, yeah, Dr. Gary Kramer, that's done extensive research. He's written at least 2 books on George Washington Carver, and he's a wonderful speaker, and he knows quite a deal on George Washington Carver's life, and he's been at the park several times.
Now, for people who've gone through these presentations and attended them in person, they've learned a lot about his history, but do you find that when people have attended, they'll come away saying, I didn't know that about Mr. Carver?
Yes, they do. We really do. We really do get those visitors that will come to one of the presentations, and they will learn something new, especially the years at Tuskegee. Right. And we're very fortunate that we've had speakers from Tuskegee University come, as well as Iowa State. They learn a lot of things about Iowa State as well, about his years at Iowa State.
So even though the monument focuses on his early years living in this region, you work very closely with his formative years, with his education and his research, and later in his life with those institutions.
Right, we work with a lot of different institutions that are, had something to do with Carver. So, we're the birthplace site, but we memorialize his entire life there. So it's great that we're able to work with a lot of these different other institutions as well.
Now, something we saw in the video, which were children hands-on, that's something that unfortunately you can't do this summer, but I know you have a lot of field trips throughout the year, a lot of chances to bring children out and kind of work in a laboratory situation, learning what he was exploring, what he was doing.
Right, we have about, normally we'll get about 8,000 school kids in the 4-state area. They'll come out, and we have an area called the Discovery Area, and it's hands-on activities all pertaining to George's life. Right. And they can touch, they can feel, tear up sometimes. And we have a wonderful laboratory that we'll do some experiments sometimes that George did. One of the popular ones that's part of the curriculum activities is peanut milk.
I've heard about that, right?
Yeah, everyone wants to do peanut milk, and we'll do demonstrations of peanut milk. Or we have another room that's kind of designed like a one-room schoolhouse that George would have maybe went to, something similar. And so we talk about a struggle for an education, and we do activities about school and such.
So in addition to children and others learning about his research and his life and his contributions as far as with science, it also gives you a chance for people to understand what his life was like, the challenges he faced, what he overcame.
Sure, and we focus on that a lot, especially with our students as well as our visitors. A lot of visitors don't really I shouldn't say understand, but they don't realize some of the struggles to leave a farm in Missouri and make his way to Iowa State University and be the first Black to graduate with degrees in agriculture from Iowa State in 1894 and 1896.
So really ahead of his time and being a forerunner in this type of accomplishments.
Definitely seems so, yes,
Right.
from leaving when he left the Carver farm.
Well, what are some of the most common questions you get when you visit? I know you do a lot of presentations, visit with the visitors. You know, what's the curiosity they ask about?
One of the questions, as I think I mentioned this earlier, is why is this park in Missouri?
Right.
Why is I think of George Washington Carver and I think of the South. And then we tell the story that, no, this is where it started at here.
Okay.
Another one is always, did George invent peanut butter?
Everybody thinks peanuts and peanut butter go together, right?
They think that George invented peanut butter, and we have to tell them now that George really didn't invent peanut butter. But, very curious questions, the art questions. A lot of visitors didn't realize that Carver was an artist, which was really his first love, and it started on the Carver farm.
So he's capturing that beauty of nature through art.
Very much so, yeah. And so visitors are very curious about that, about the art aspect of his life as well.
Do you find people that today, whether it's photography or artwork, they may come out to the monument and continue that tradition of capturing nature? Do you ever see people running around with cameras or wanting to paint pictures from the scenes?
Yes, a lot of photographers come out, a lot of artists. As a matter of fact, in April, we have an event called Art in the Park. And it's dedicated to Carver's love of art. So we'll have artists that will come out, plein air artists that will come out and set up around the park and just kind of create, kind of like Carver did.
And of course, Carver Day in the summer, but it's a year-round park. You have year-round activities. So.
Year-round activities, we're open every day, 7 days a week.
Right.
Normally 9 to 5 every day, except for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's Day. So visitors can come out at any time and learn about Carver's life at any time of the year.
I think something that sets you aside from other national park locations is there's no visitor's fee.
We have no fee. We have no fee. It's your park. It's a free park, and you can just come out and enjoy whenever you like to and learn about George Washington Carver.
And other things I know you've had in the past, you have Prairie Day in the fall, then you have some other things. I know you've had Hispanic Heritage Day, those types of different themes, events, right?
Right, we have a lot of different theme events. Normally we would have, our next big event would be Prairie Day. And Prairie Day is celebrating life on a Missouri prairie, 1870s when George would have been a child growing up on the Carver farm. So we have a lot of hands-on demonstrations, cultural demonstrations at the Carver house, candle dipping and such. And then later on in the year, we started, one of our newer events was the Hispanic Heritage Day celebration. And so that's one of our newer events, which is a lot of fun as well.
And I imagine the prairie is something that people don't think about, but you actually have a prairie that you keep restoring, keeping in its natural state. I mean, I've heard that you have controlled burns, and you want to keep that as prairie out there in parts of the park.
We want to keep it as much as prairie as possible. We have about 140 acres of what we call restored prairie. And we try to get all the invasives out. And right now, this time of the year, it's beautiful to go out. It looks nice. There's wildflowers everywhere. And so it's a nice addition to the park, that you'll get some of the more of the people that are interested in the natural history that will come out and want to come out and learn more about the prairie and such as well.
So a nice tie to that nature, the conservation, people who want to see that side of the
Sure.
area.
Yes,
tying
yes.
that together and so forth. Well, I know that you've been working at Carver for a while. What do you enjoy the most? You've dealt with Carver Day, a lot of the visitors, a lot of things that have happened over the years. What do you enjoy?
Well, I think what I enjoy the most, I enjoyed Carver Day. I've been coordinating it for the last couple of years. But what I enjoy the most, I enjoy talking to visitors, and visitors learn, telling visitors more about the Carver story, about things that they may not know, and maybe sparking their interest to learn more about George Washington Carver. So this is what I enjoy. I enjoy the visitor interaction, as well as being able to get into like the archival collection and learning more about Mr. Carver through his writings and such.
And I imagine there's still things that to be learned. Even though people have done videos, they've written books, there's more of his story to be told.
Oh, there's always things, to be learned and to be told. Sometimes I'll go out and look on a Google search or something, and I'll find a photograph that I've never seen. Like, well, where did that photograph come from? So, it's a fun park. I've been there for a while because I enjoy the story.
Great. And of course you have staff that work together and with the public when you're able to have the public inside the building, but you still have, as we said at the beginning of the show, somebody joined us late, you can still go walk and see the park and visit that
You can
way.
still walk right now as we're closed because of
building,
the health situation. The visitor center, the building is closed, but the trail is open. It's open from 9 to 5. That you can come out and take a walk, and you can still learn about George Washington Carver's life.
Okay, so Carver Day online. Go to your Facebook site, your social media.
Any of our social media, and we'll all that. The 11th through the 14th, we'll show videos of past Carver Day speakers. We'll show some of the musicians,
Right.
And a few of the storytellers that we've had. And we'll do a lot of different historical posts as well, of some of the historic photographs as well.
Okay, so you're kind of opening up the archives a little, letting people see things.
Right. So it should be a fun day. I mean, it's always, we're disappointed that we couldn't have the on-site visit, but we're going to still celebrate his life.
Great. And we'll remind the viewers as well, KGCS also has programming that'll tie into that they can listen to some of those speeches that you've talked about in those presentations.
Sounds great,
So,
great.
a chance for people to continue to learn, basically.
Continue to learn, and we'll have a good time with it, I'm sure.
And lastly, somebody tunes in late, they say, how do they find the monument? Or in Joplin, say, how do they drive? How do they find it?
We're located in just 2 miles outside of Diamond.
Right.
We're from Joplin is about 13 miles or so, on Carver Road. It's an easy place to find. You can just go on. We're on social media. Any social media, and our website's pretty good. They can learn. They can get directions as well.
And there's a good old-fashioned road signs along
and
the way.
there's good old-fashioned road signs. We have road signs everywhere. Come and visit us.
All right. Well, Curtis, I'd like to thank you for joining me on the program today, sharing information, and wish the best for Carver Day 2020.
Well, thank you for having me, and we really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.